Hello, Be Awesome at Facility Management podcast listeners, viewers, followers, and subscribers. I am your host, Joshua Peach, for a awesome episode 24. I think this is going to be a great one on this sunny Friday. I just rushed into the office in time to go live after watching the premiere day of Thor: Love and Thunder. Highly recommend it. And looks like I got co-host with the most, looking like it's the cabin, unless you did some other backup information.
I didn't do any rushing. I came here late last night and got up this morning and kind of lounged around. I'm broadcasting from the Mountaintop Studio today in Preston Hollow, New York, in the Catskill Mountains.
I feel like you're running away from somebody all the time because you're always someplace different. Like, people, unpredictable. I'm either at my house or I'm at an event that I share with people, or I'm at a premiere movie day with my 15-year-old son. So
yeah, you can't hit a moving target.
Yeah, I can't hit a moving target. Well, our guest today in the middle tile is someone that I think is just, we've met 3 times, maybe 4, but I met Christina Renaud last July in Plymouth, where she is the director of facilities, and very limited conversation, but it was like, this person's really cool, and she's in a great district. It's a tough gig. We're going to get into that. And I saw her again at the MFAA conference. We went head to head in Family Feud, and I lost, although I have a much greater knowledge of 80s rock music. And then I saw her again a couple weeks ago in Plymouth. And Paul and I just said, Christina would be an awesome podcast guest for us to dig into and learn more about, because, well, from the outside, we just think she's phenomenal. I know that there's a whole lot more to her, that she's making a difference in the world. So, Christina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me here.
Is this your first podcast?
I've actually done one podcast, only audio, but that was a completely different genre, if you will.
Okay.
We'll have to search it out.
Cool. So you've been director of facilities at Plymouth Public Schools, which we fact-checked the size. Plymouth is a fairly unique community. It's the oldest community in New England, but it has an enormous landmass with a low population. You have a lot of population from a tourist standpoint, but you've got roughly 135 miles and 7,500 kids in 13 buildings. Let's start with you. Why facility management?
Well, it lined up with my past, my schooling, some of the unique qualities that really is required for a job like this is something that I've already used in a few of my other gigs, if you will. I had been a senior reactor operator at Entergy nuclear power plant for some amount of years. I worked there for 15 years. I started off as a auxiliary operator. I was an instructor, and then a senior reactor operator there. But I'm a graduate of Mass Maritime Academy in Plant Facilities, and I have my master's in facilities management. So when the plant closed, and I decided to step away from that type of work, this line of work was really a good focus for me, based on some of the schooling I've had and the experience that I've had in the past.
So I want to get to math.
That's amazing. From nukes to kooks, because we know the people that we all work with, right? Yeah.
Hey, listen, people are the same. It doesn't matter what job you do. It doesn't matter what line of work you are in. That's one thing that doesn't change. It's people.
I wasn't going to use that line, Paul, but pretty close.
Yeah.
But so two pieces right there. Mass Maritime. That's no joke. I mean, that's a tough school. A friend of mine's son just graduated from there. You learn a lot. You get a lot of opportunity out of it. That program is one of the best in the country, if not the best. Was the master's program the one that you go to the hotel in Waltham, or was it on campus?
So actually, I was actually part of the very first cohort for the master's program. So we were on campus. I know they ran it that way for a number of cohorts, and then they did move it up to a different location.
Yeah.
But for me, it was basically every other weekend. You do Friday night lessons, and then all day Saturday. You take a number of courses, do projects and things. It was really great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear a lot of good things about it. Even the way they've got it set up now. They're up in Waltham, like Josh says, and people go and for Friday, Saturday. I mean, I think it's a great way to get your mass, especially if you're working.
We got to figure out how to get a weekend over there. Go over there for a class, maybe do a live podcast or something, because the program is. Everyone talks about it. That everyone that goes to it talks about it, and I just don't think enough people are doing it. And I don't know, and I think it's promoted pretty well, but.
And as an MFAA member, we have a big connection with Mass Maritime. We do a scholarship over there, and a lot of our members have come through Mass Maritime.
Well, that's on your task list of things to do, Paul. Get us on the invite list for a site visit on a weekend class.
I think we've got our connection right here.
Good.
It's an easy one for me.
I'd be happy to join you.
So nuclear. Before we get into the schools, I've never met anybody that worked at a nuclear reactor.
Well, we can't get away from the nuclear reactor, right?
No. I mean,
facilities.
Yeah. So, what was that like? Like that had to have been somewhat I mean, that's. There's no room for error. I mean, there's I don't even know the detail that's involved in all this stuff, but I just hear nuclear reactor and I start to get a little nervous.
Yeah, I find different reactions from different people that I've met throughout the years. And the biggest thing that I'll say is it's really just about education. People get nervous or worried and all the way to being the extreme protesting and things. But what I find is that if you understand and you had the opportunity to know how those plants run, how their safety systems are designed, there really isn't so much to be nervous about. I mean, it's a highly trained profession. That's that came out of 3 Mile Island accident. Actually, was all of the training requirements and among a lot of other things. But talk about a planting ground for Mass Maritime graduates. We had. There were really two types of people that worked there, particularly in the operations department. That was Mass Maritime grads and Navy nukes. So the quality of personnel, particularly at this location, it was a little unique, but it was also very, very quality personnel all around the plant, not just in operations. But yeah, I was never nervous about working there. We were informed, we were educated, we were constantly trained and challenged, always running scenarios in the simulator to be prepared for the worst conditions. So it was never a point where you're nervous. It was an extreme amount of responsibility, but I enjoyed it. I was challenged. It was you could never know everything. You were always learning, which was a great environment to work in.
Now, do you live in Plymouth or you live in the area?
I lived about 1.5 miles from the plant. So
okay.
I still live in that same location. So I live right in Plymouth in the Manamet area. So, yep.
Yeah, no, because when I saw you, it was in a social setting last month, and it was like everybody knew you. It was I could have sworn I was with the mayor, right? And so I figured you had not just the direct tie. You've only been at the district for 2 years, and you can cover a lot of ground. But the people that knew you, it was your net is far and wide as far as people that know you, and they all smile, which is always a plus, because people see me coming sometimes, they know me, and they cringe and look the other way. So
well, I think her parting words that day were, "You guys better behave because they know me here."
Yeah, we associated ourselves with you to get the good seat, and then we had to make sure that we behaved ourselves after you left, which we did.
We did.
We had a good time. But so you were in the area. You started. It could have been the best time or the worst time, right? It was right in the thick of COVID. Schools were closed for 4 or 5 months at that time, because you said August 2020 is when you started with Plymouth. And you inherited a legacy. Arthur Monfron was there, I think, his whole career, right, Paul? Was he there?
I think so, yeah.
As a facilities manager, that was his whole career was here.
And how many years was he there? He was
30.
It was almost
30 years, I think. Yeah.
It was over 30.
30, yeah.
So one of the founding members of the MFAA.
Right.
One of the originals.
Yeah. No, I can remember meeting him in 1996. So that's 4 and 6, 26 years at least. So yeah, he was there for a long time. So first, why the shift from power plant to public schools? What was the thought on that?
So it's an easy and complicated answer. So for those of you who know the area, the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant closed down in June of 2019. I did have a job offer to stay, but originally I was going to stay as the training manager for the site through the transition and the purchase from Holtec. But I decided to make the change. One of the reasons was um, just the opportunity. They offered a severance package. I'd been there for a long time. It was a decent severance, and throughout the entirety of my kids' lives, I've never been home
Hmm.
as a stay-at-home mom. So I looked at that as probably my only opportunity to really get a year or so in that role, and strictly that role, which was something I feel that I was blessed with, and I couldn't turn it up. So at the end of the day, I decided to close ties with Pilgrim, take the severance, and spend some time at home with my kids. So the goal was about 14 months. So that would have been 2 summers and a school year. I started getting a little antsy toward the end. And I did take a job as a project manager with a valve company for a little while. Um, I didn't love that work, but at the same, that kind of grew with me at the same time that this position opened up. So when this position opened up, I said, "That is it. That is my dream job in town, working with the kids in the environment with my community, in the same system that my kids are in, my neighbors, my neighbors' kids, my kids' friends." And that kind of calling was not to be ignored. So it was a little uncomfortable because I'd only been with that other company a short period of time, and
Hmm.
not ideal. Not really my mo to pick up and leave right away. But this was an opportunity that I wasn't going to pass up if it had come to me, and it, as we know, it did end up with me. Um, so that's kind of how I got here, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, you'll find I worked in the town in Watertown, in the town I live in, when I started my facilities career, and it's absolutely wonderful to see the kids. And if you're there long enough, I was there 10 years. I saw kids that went from third and fourth grade and then graduated,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it was great to see them along the way. Some of them I saw because they were breaking things along the way that we had to fix, and,
Sure.
and you see them, get graduate and go on to a trade school. I said,
Yeah.
that's great. I said,
Yeah.
it's really it's a great feeling. And Kenny Wirtz always said it from the beginning. He said that's the reason we're here.
That's
We're
Hmm.
here
right.
for the
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah,
We're
When
not
when
here to
I'm
make
having
$1 million. Yeah,
when I'm having a really bad day, no matter how time pressed I am, I try to get into one of the elementary schools, and in particular, because those kids really make you smile, and just get in contact with a couple of them, even if it's just seeing them in the hallway and having them say hello,
yeah,
and it really does kind of give you that breath and that drive to just you know, oh my goodness, I'm tripping my words a little bit, but divide up the good from the bad and just keep moving forward. And it gives you that reminder of why you're working so hard, why you're pulling your hair out, why you're have to control your temper, and all of those things that we know as facilities managers that we're faced with all the time. But it revitalizes you for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had when I was in Watertown, we had a student that I followed through middle school. He must have carried a Leatherman, or he had a set of tools somewhere on him, because he would take like plates off of the light switches, and he would, loosen a door handle. He didn't do anything really harmful, but he was
Right.
just mischievous. And I kept telling the principal, we got to find this kid, because we keep making the repairs. We got to find this kid. And he said, I know, but he's really not doing anything so terrible. I said, no, I want to find him so that I can follow him and hire him when he's done. He said, because he's doing a lot of work here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, that's what we talked about last week, Paul. Finding the kids that could be that next person to come in and do a great job for you. Um,
Yeah, in Plymouth, we're blessed with some really amazing tech departments.
mhm.
Both high schools sort of have their different specialties, but we have an HVAC program, we have a carpentry program, electrical. We do have a facilities program at the North High School. There are a lot of students here that go through a tech program and go on to, careers um, and including the possibility of facilities management or something similar.
Right. Because we are struggling. We all know that. We just, there aren't enough facilities people out there. There's no feeder program that we know of. We're beating the bushes every time a job opens up to try and get people in, and we need more of those wrench turners and guys that can hold a screwdriver, guys and gals that can hold a screwdriver, and come into the field.
Right.
Well, speaking of guys and gals, how hard has it been to I don't want to say adapt, but I mean, how hard is it for you as a woman being in an environment where it's 99% men as directors and leaders? Have you found it difficult? Are there pluses and minuses to it? Is it nothing? Is it just an imaginary? Is there an imaginary thing that people all say, how difficult it is, and it's not? I would assume that there's times that it's difficult.
Right. So it's kind of a complicated answer. So it's definitely not imaginary, but it really is in the eye of the beholder. So, I mean, for me, my entire career, starting with college, has been very male dominated. I mean, the numbers have grown, but if you look back at Mass Maritime, the male to female ratio has never been 50-50. I doubt it still is. It's definitely quite a bit more females that look there for their college experience. But I want to say it was probably 10% maybe when I was there. So it's really not a new thing for me. My whole career really has been in a male dominated sort of environment. My first job out of college worked for GE. I was a field service engineer. I worked mostly on steam turbines, but did some other things, some controls, some gas. But again, mostly male environment. And then same with Entergy. When you look at like a power plant like that, there are plenty of females that work there, but in the department that I worked in, which was operations, really is mostly male dominated as well. So I'm sort of seasoned at dealing with that environment. And to me, I don't even see it, to be honest. And that could be for many reasons. I'm used to it, or, I'm not a person that looks at obstacles anyway. So it's not really about what's in my way. It's how do I get to the other side? So I do have some blinders. I know I don't see a lot of it just because I'm so used to it, and I know how to just forge through to get what I need to get done. But it definitely isn't made up. It is out there. I will say though, for the most part, my experience has been, if you're there to do something and you're trying to accomplish something, if you have the knowledge and the skill that requires you to do what you're there to do, then that stuff doesn't really get in the way, except for individual instances. It's not like a group think that I've ever run into, or if I have, it hasn't prevented me from doing what I need to do.
So you talk about percentages in college. When I went to Wentworth Institute many, many years ago, I was there when they admitted the first female student.
Wow.
She was in the architectural program, and it was like, wow. And now their chancellor's a female, and they've just come so far. But I was there when she was brought into the school.
Yeah, that's great.
So come so far. But back in those days, all phones were nailed to the wall too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I'm with you on your thought on this. I think that it's instances, it's occasion. It's not everyone making it difficult, but I think that the instances that I've experienced as far as women in the industry, I go, there shouldn't be any instances. If you're talented and you know what you're doing, I mean, one of the most passionate, caring, hardworking, and smartest people in school facilities is Sandy Cashin, and Dennis Yarmouth is just retired.
Right.
I mean, the greatest joy she had was when she got a work truck and a gas card. Like she couldn't have been any more proud. Like, and she did great work. And when I would go down and visit her, everybody knew her, everybody loved her. Her schools were clean, safe, healthy, and a great environment.
And she
And that's
created that department, right? She
Right.
got there and created it ground up.
yo, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, she inherited a facility director that was there for 40 plus years, and
Yeah.
she came in and took over kind of right when technology was getting more streamlined and more efficient. And it's a silly phrase that I wish somebody would just throw in the trash. Doing more with less. She's figured out how to do that.
Right.
But I know that she's had some bumps and bruises along the way.
Yep.
And I just think that for me, I always look at people and go, hey, if you've got the talent and you get the skill set, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, where you came from, whatever. You give that person the opportunity, give them the ball, and let them run with it.
Right.
And as you heard me say in the keynote that we saw in November, I want more diversity in this environment. We want to figure out how to help move that along.
Yeah.
So no, that's great. And so when we talk about coming on board through COVID, which how we maintain facilities changed dramatically, right, through all of
Sure.
that. And this is your first school experience. What do you think are some of the great learning lessons, or some of the, if you had some aha moments that you're like, oh, this is a great new, because we thought we've innovated, we've created, and we're doing things differently. What are a couple of things that you're really proud of over the last 2 years?
Actually, that's a loaded question, right?
Yeah,
You know,
everything.
I think so. First, let me start this by saying that I am lucky enough to work for a really great administrative team. They're thoughtful, they're supportive, they are committed to facilities. So my experience isn't like everyone's. I don't think. I think we have a number of facilities management individuals that really don't aren't able to say those same words, and which is a shame as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah.
I consider myself very lucky in that respect, um, and that's absolutely part of the reason why this school was so successful in reopening. So I guess that the thing that I would like to say that I'm personally the proudest of is once we did come up with a plan that a lot of that was initiated prior to me starting. I sort of walked into executing part of a plan and then finishing it and then adjusting as the recommendations changed, as the requirements changed. Was once we started putting our plans in play, and then we started getting kids back and staff back, um, we were successful in executing each part of the plan such that we didn't have to pull back. We didn't
Hmm.
have to send kids home. We didn't have to send staff home. We had one instance only at one school where we had to cancel a few days, and that was because of an external event that so many students were exposed to COVID um, during a holiday event. I think it may have been something like a New Year's Eve party or
Yeah.
something like that, where it was isolated to that school only, and it was an external event. That it was nice to see once we dedicated ourselves to these plans and executed them, and it was from the administrators down to the custodians, and our our health team as well, that it worked, and we didn't have
Hmm.
to pull back, we didn't have to scale back, we didn't have to send droves of kids home or droves of staff home, and that went through all the way through until our current situation right now, which is full-time school, everybody's in, no, masks are not required except for if you come back after COVID. Um, so I would say that that's probably the biggest pride moment there. Was Yeah, it was hard. You know Part-time school wasn't the best, but each step that we took and when we took it seemed to be successful. So that was good moments.
I think you opened up and hit the nail on the head. To have a supportive administrative team is so important in our jobs. To go back to something as simple as our members in the MFAA leaving once a month to go to a meeting.
Hmm.
Um, Early on, when I first get into the MFAA, we were hard to get attendance at meetings because the facilities people felt like they couldn't leave. Like
Yeah.
their business manager didn't want them to leave, or they felt like the place was going to fall apart without them. And we all
Yeah.
know that that's not the case. We all have one of these. We all have a cell phone. We all they can get in touch with us if the building's burning down.
Yeah.
There's always an emergency, and when you go on vacation, people figure it out.
Yeah.
They can still live without you, but if you don't have that support coming from the top down, it really makes it hard to do the job.
Yeah, and it's the trust too coming from that.
Yeah.
So, I'm not micromanaged, and if I decide that an hour with this group or a half a day or a day with this group is the best use of my time, then that's what I decide, and there isn't any pushback, you know.
Yeah.
So interesting question for you both then, because as I said earlier, Christina, I think I've thought you were awesome from the first time I met you. So I think that part of that alignment with leadership is it has to do with your personality, and Paul, you as well. Um, when you think about the people that you might hear that don't have that alignment with leadership, do you think it's the leadership, or do you think it's possibly that person that's either fearful or doesn't want to, try to walk and get the leadership on board with them? It just says, oh, they'll never let me. I'm not going to ask. Like, where do you
Yeah.
think? Because in my career in the last 25 years, this is the first time that you really see facility directors moving. Like we
Yeah.
just talked about Arthur. Arthur was there for his whole career. When we talked about Sandy Cashin, the previous facility director was there for his almost 40 years. Paul, you did a long stint at both of your places. But now facility directors are moving, and I'm seeing that some are going to districts, and the leadership for one facility director leaving because they didn't like the leadership, and the next person comes in and they're like, oh my God, the superintendent is amazing, the business manager is phenomenal, I'm getting everything I want. They get buy-in, and they don't have anything to bad say about me. They're not micromanaging me. So just kind of curious your thoughts. Is I think it's a little bit of both personally, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think one way to tell is, well, typically in the past, the facilities manager was there. If you had a 10-year career, you were there to two and maybe three superintendents, and a change of administration there. So if that facilities person is still making those events and being confident, then it's the facilities person because the administration's changing. And if they're not, it's you can sometimes all of a sudden we haven't seen someone in 8 or 10 years at a meeting, and they start showing up to events and stuff, and it's like because their administration changed and they get this. It's really hard to say if it could be one or the other. It's a personality thing.
Well, it's interesting you make that point, because the superintendent's average tenure is 2 years. It's under 2 years. And so you're right. And I feel like if a facility director has one or two bad experiences with a superintendent, then they just kind of turn it off and they just go, well, they're. And I think, and that's something that I was working on a couple of years ago, that I wanted to provide the Superintendents Association. 2015, 16. I think it was 76 of the almost 400 schools in the state had superintendents that were departing and not going someplace else. So there were 76 new positions that needed to be filled. And so I said, and I still think it's a great idea, is, there should be a facility director's superintendent welcome packet. And it should have the total number of buildings, total number of square feet, total number of custodians, facility staff, number of work orders completed, after hours use of buildings, like all the stats and statistics in a 3x5 piece of paper, so that superintendent knows, because now you're starting off on the right foot. Right? There's states like California. I mean, think about this. Christina, you talk about how you try to make time to go to an elementary school like every day, right? In the state of California, they actually had to make it a rule that the superintendent has to walk the halls of every school building in their district at least once a year.
Right.
Because they weren't. Like, how do you know your space?
Yeah.
So,
well, the interesting thing too, you brought up facilities managers moving, but superintendents, I think historically you're right, they've moved more, but we're at a time where that movement hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's sped up. And then you also have, I think, which is a little different, a lot of business administrators also moving and retiring or just going to a different location. So right now, I would say that brings a challenge to the administrative group in general, because there's a lot of growing pains happening, and it's not just at the facilities management level. And so whether it's whether it's somebody that the facilities director reports to or somebody that reports to them, that's a challenge. It's an efficiency challenge because there's a lot of knowledge that is walking away, and whether it's to retirement or to another district, and that takes some time for the new people coming in to catch up and to kind of become useful, for lack of a better word, to our department. And that's been a challenge here too. We've had, I've only been here 2 years. I'm on my third business administrator, third.
Wow.
Wow.
So, and that's my lifeline. That's who I report to.
Right.
And that's when, when I very infrequently, but when I have to ring that bell that I need help, that's the person I go to. So that's been a challenge for me. And you can take that title out and fill it in with superintendent, or you can fill it in with whoever you may report to. But that, I think there's a lot of movement in general in these ranks. And that can be good. New can be good. New is good in a lot of ways, but it also can be challenging in that respect. And then to just answer your kind of your initial question, what's the reason? I don't think you can ever assign a reason. Every district is different. The needs of the different district are different. The assignments, who's in charge of what, it's all very different. I've always looked at it from a personal perspective. What am I willing to do? What am I willing to give? Where do I put my work-life balance? And it's also in the experience. So it's in the experience of the facilities manager, not just necessarily in this position, but in your career. How confident are you in how much you're needed, right? I've always had that attitude. If something doesn't sit right with me, or if things are getting too chaotic, it just comes down to, all right, where do I draw the line? When do I walk away? And I don't mean from the job itself, but from that moment, from that assignment, from that problem. How confident am I in, okay, I'm done for today, and I'm going to walk away, and the rest of it has to sit until I can get back to it, and not get burnt out and not get worn out, because especially in this COVID time, you could be here at your desk 24 hours a day.
If you let it happen, that will happen.
And I refuse to do that. I just don't. I have 2 kids at home that need me, and I don't want to miss them growing up. And so far, it's been a workable existence for me here and at home. But it's just how much you believe in your self-worth, and how much you believe in, if I ever get a management team that's not enough for, well, then it's time to think about doing something else.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because the people that I talk to that work 12, 18, 24 hours a day, when you talk to them, you don't know what they actually did that was effective and useful, because you get to a certain point where it doesn't matter who you are, and doesn't matter how much you care, you're not productive. You're exhausting yourself. And then you talk to somebody that puts in an honest 8, the effectiveness of your hours, what's the most important. So no, that's good. Now we got a question here from good old Bobby B. And
Bobby
Bob
B.
Bogardus, you got to put the post on, because I know I'm going to butcher this and get it wrong, but Bob Bogardus is, I think, great-grandfather, might be great-great-grandfather. I don't remember when Mass Maritime started, but one of Bobby B's relatives was part of the founding trustees of Mass Maritime, and his name is chiseled. There's a Bogardus name chiseled as one of the trustees at Mass Maritime. But that's not his question. It said, Christina, did you ever have the opportunity to work with your just retired Plymouth Fire Chief, Ed Bradley, and your association with all departments?
Yeah, I did have select opportunities to work with him. Probably the biggest example is we have a safety committee here in Plymouth. We meet once a month, and we meet at the high school, and we have representatives from elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. I'm trying to make this go to.
You want to get that? You can, Bob. Paul and I can ping pong.
I'm just trying to get it to go to voicemail.
The deal is, if we answer the phone, we all have to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to hear it. So we have representatives from the police department, the fire department, and our emergency management team that we have here in Plymouth, and we all discuss matters of school safety and and it kind of bleeds into community safety too. So he was always at those meetings. Any emergency management situations we had, which are storms and other things, he was always present there. So I always, I had those opportunities to get to know him and get to spend some time with him. And he was amazing. I got to be honest, just a wealth of knowledge, and also rolled up into somebody who was happy to share it with you. Any question you would ask, anything, just instantly ready to be helpful.
That's great. I think you find so many times in a safety meeting or any of those type meetings, all of a sudden people get territorial, but it sounds like that wasn't the case here. It was someone who was so willing to share.
Yeah, I mean, it was that whole committee is a good team, and it really isn't about as far as raising your hand. It's more about how can I help, and or I'll take that. We'll meet again next month. I'll take care of that. I'll update you next month, and it is a good group effort here in Plymouth, and it's refreshing.
Yeah, I got to think that just from a mindset of logistic, you're 134 square miles. My community is 27 square miles, and we're in the process of basically going to a campus setting where all the school buildings are going to be on one massive plot of land that just happens to be across the street from the police station and the fire station. What's the furthest distance? Like, if you take the two furthest schools, how long does it take you to get from one to the other?
So without too much traffic delays, 20 to 25 minutes. It's really Federal Furnace and South Elementary. Those are kind of the two schools that I look at as the hardest to get from one to the other, because there's no easy way. It's all side roads. So it is spread out. I mean, and we have, like you said, 13 locations. A number of the locations are close enough to each other that if you find yourself going to those, it's not as challenging. But we do have some that are in the outskirts of town.
Yeah, for a lot of people, 25 minutes is their commute to and from work.
Right.
Each way, and you do it once you're in town.
Yeah, average commute was 27 minutes before COVID. That was the average commute to work. So, how difficult, or how much more of a challenge is it to live in a tourist community, especially one with such history between Plymouth Plantation and Plymouth Rock and Mayflower and whale watches and all the stuff that you got going on?
I mean, being in the schools, it's not that bad, really, because the height of it is the summertime. June could be challenging because the weather gets nice, and different parts of the country get out of school at different times. September can be challenging. A lot of the Plymouth and Cape areas have kind of realized over the years more and more fall travel because the weather does stay nice. But overall, it's not too bad just because of the timing.
Yeah.
So just so people know, I mean, I've used Plymouth in our defense of the way we talk for years, and I know we have a lot of Southern friends that listen to our podcast here, and they always say, you guys have an accent. How come? Where'd you guys get? And I tell them all the time, we have the Rock. Yeah, they landed in Plymouth. And then everyone else got an accent because it started here in Plymouth and it went out. So that's I know that we park the car and we talk. They think we talk funny, and we go to Fenway Park and Harvard Yard and all that good stuff. But I think they're all wrong.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so. The reason why I'm so good with music knowledge of the '80s was because I had my Walkman in the '80s, and we went on field trips. And in May and June, every school district in the state used to do whale watches out of Plymouth Harbor. I don't know if they still do it or not, but I can just remember, it seemed like every day there was, 500-600 kids from all over the state getting on boats in Plymouth, which is I hope they still do it because it was a cool experience.
I don't know if it's as widespread. My fifth graders went. But I don't think every elementary school did it, but my kids' elementary school did do it. So.
No, that's very, very cool. The North High School, is that the newer one?
South is the newer one.
That's a pretty impressive.
Well, they're both fairly new, right? So one's 10 years old, that's North High School, and one's 5 years old, that's South High School. Okay, the North is the one that I toured. It just had been built. It was pretty impressive. That's the one that has all the tech space and the. They both do. They both have tech sections. Yep. Okay. It's just different, So at North they have more. They have the medical program. They do have a wood shop over there. They have the facilities program. Um, itself is more of the electrical HVAC. They also have culinary. They have like a hair salon. They also do the early childhood education there, a program for that. So it's spread across both schools.
Do you guys do after hours training for adults for them to become electricians or carpenters or other
No,
skills?
no, not through Plymouth Public Schools. Our space is rentable, so if somebody approaches with that, it may be something we could accommodate. It'd be a little difficult though, because really, it's really hard to share a space like that with somebody other than a student, just because of how the program is set up. But not at this time.
hmm No, I've seen a couple of schools that are doing it. Trying to get grown-ups. It's I've got a teenager and I keep talking to him. I'm like, hey, maybe think about a trade. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe you don't want to be an electrician because your dad's been electrocuted 3 times and you don't want to have that stroke of luck. But plumbers, if you're a plumber, even if you're not a plumber by trade, but you have the plumber by understanding, it's a pretty good place to be.
sure.
Or there's now these programs that they're trying to just find spaces to have adults that they've done the adult thing for a little while and they worked in the cubicle and now they say, I think I'd like to be an electrician. I think I'd like to be a carpenter. And I'm just starting to see some of the school spaces being used around the country to do that. We're kind of unique, I think, because we have the Voc Tech schools. Like that's not something you have all around the country.
Right.
And those spaces are probably more conducive for that.
Yeah, and I know we actually share the same project management team and design team that you had in South. I'm on the building committee here in Watertown, where I live, and it was AI3 and Hill International.
Okay.
I know they did it. I'm not sure of the builder. We have great builders, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they did South. But I know the architect and the project management team are always going back and forth and talking about South High and the work that they did there together. And they talked about Arthur all the time because naturally, as a facilities manager, you're a big part of school construction as well when it happens.
Absolutely.
You'd like to hope.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
You would hope to be.
Yeah.
We'd like to hope. Yeah. No, this is great. I'm excited to see what you do because I think you're going to set the world on fire, and I hope that you stay in the public education space. You've been bit because you opened right up and you know exactly what it takes to remind yourself the why of doing it, which is going and seeing those kids and watching those kids grow. And I'm sure one of the greatest things that you could see is when you see those kids in kindergarten and first grade and you go visit them and then they're up getting their diploma 12 years later and you're there and you say, I was a small part of their success because you are. I think that's why I love the operation side of the house of schools because without them having, there's every study that shows that, poor learning environment is a poor health environment too. And it's for many different reasons. So providing that environment for them to succeed and move on is something that no amount of money can replace that feeling, I don't think. So,
and I think what I'm seeing, I'm going to jump on what Josh is saying. Speaking from an MFAA standpoint, I believe that you are the future of the MFAA.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I really
got my
do.
vote. My vote doesn't count, but got my vote.
I mean, someone told me that when I was 3 years into my career too, and I said, yeah. And,
yeah, right.
I ended up. I was secretary, vice president, president, past president, and a board member for 16, 20 years, whatever it was. And I see you following in there, and I hope you do. I mean, I would encourage you to do that, and any support you need from the old guys to tell you how to get around some of those obstacles that get in the way in running a nonprofit, mostly volunteer organization. My biggest thing would say, just don't let it burn you out when you do get involved, because I see you getting more and more involved, and you have a great reputation with all of the members that I've talked to, and I do really believe that you are the future.
Yeah, and I'll say that this group was I was so happy to be introduced to this group, and Arthur made it very clear. One of the first things you need to do is you need to get attached to this group,
Hmm.
and of course I took his advice, and it is a very comforting thing knowing that that support system is in place,
Hmm.
and just I'd be curious to see if we added up all of the members' years of experience, what that would look like. But
Oh yeah.
I tell you, you can feel it from minute one. Um, there's just in different advice for different situations, different perspectives, but all of it experienced and learned. And it is one of the things that have helped me get this far thus far. And it just wouldn't be the same in this position without knowing, even if I go a month without asking a question or making a phone call, just knowing that it's there
Yeah.
is a consolation in and of itself. And it's definitely, you don't feel alone.
See what
Yeah.
I mean? She is the marketing department for
Yeah.
MFAA, right
Well,
there.
no, it's
But I'm
spot
just
on.
speaking the truth. I'm just speaking the truth.
Yep.
It's spot on, and it's something that I share all the time. And I tell companies, I've talked to uh, numerous companies over the last 18 months that have had an interest in getting into the public sector. They've been selling and working in the private sector. And they go, hey, I think we want to do some work in the public sector. And I just go, don't screw up. Don't
Yeah.
screw up with one. Do not screw up with one of them, because if
Yeah.
you do, you're out. You're
Yeah.
done. Like you just don't. So don't come in talking fast, because this is the one vertical market that is not competitive with one another. If you're in manufacturing, if you're in the facilities world for manufacturing, Pepsi ain't calling Coke and saying, "Hey, what are you using? What
Right.
kind of HVAC system are you using? What kind of equipment and tools are you using?" And so this market is truly a market where the one another care about one another. You care about one another, and you have a direct contact. When we talk about MFAA, they've got 60-70% of all the schools,
Yeah.
and there's emails and listservs and all these other things and meetings that you guys can say, hey, this works, this doesn't work, these people are great. And that's been my from a private sector employee supporting public sector. That's the one thing I always knew was don't screw it up, man. do
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
do not screw it up. I don't want to be on the wrong side of the
Yeah.
screw up with any of you guys.
So
And that's what I love.
I'll tell you a story that you guys will chuckle and maybe roll your eyes in a little bit. So Kenny and I have been having these discussions, but I've been working with Maya to try to get a training program for head custodians and lead custodians it doesn't focus on the technical pieces. It focuses on the soft skills, the communication, the management end, the leadership end.
Hmm.
We haven't gotten very far, but we have gotten to the point where I think we're all pointed in the same direction, which is really great. But had we the Maya team had an instructor in mind, and my first try to step forward with this, we had an appointment, a Zoom appointment with this particular instructor, and we'd been talking for like 45 minutes, and he still didn't get the point that yes, this is for Plymouth. Plymouth is going to be the pilot, but the whole point of this is so that in the future it's going to be available for everyone. It's Maya. It's not just Plymouth, right?
Right.
And he couldn't. He missed that in the first couple discussions. So at one point, when he finally got it, the light bulb came on, and he said, "I don't understand. Why exactly do you care about the other districts?"
Hmm.
And I immediately,
Oh,
first of all, I was like, okay.
Hmm.
I was already not leaning toward using this individual anyway because he couldn't really meet the specific needs we were looking for. But as soon as that was said, it was just, what else? What do I say? Well, why
Right.
not?
right.
Right.
This
Yeah.
isn't about
It's
just me.
not a competition. We're not
No.
battling each other.
We're
No.
not. And the one thing is it is a very unique parallel to the nuclear industry, because the nuclear industry is the other example of not being in competition with one another because of the safety standards and because of all of the laws and procedures that have been put in place because of the potential for accidents and because of 3 Mile Island. We were in, that's where I grew up. I grew up in an environment that it's not a competition. If you learn something in one space, you presented it to the other plants because in this case it was because of safety reasons. but you're not competing against each other. The whole point
Right.
is to grow together
Mhm.
and to get better together, and you work better as a team anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
it's it's so funny because, and I'm not saying it because it's me. I'm just saying it because it was a story, true story, which is the polar opposite of your experience. I recently had a conversation with a school district that wanted me to just talk to their, for Be Awesome. They wanted me to go in and talk about customer service, coping with stress, and just a Be Awesome morning keynote. The staff count that they had was about 100 custodians and maintenance techs, and so I'm not cheap. I'm a value, but I'm not cheap. I mean, my price starts at $5,000. So,
Yep.
when I was talking to them and they were so interested and they were excited, I said, "Hey, how big is your auditorium?" I'm like, "Oh, 500 people." I said, "Well, you got 100 that are going to be in those seats. So why don't you go north, south, east, and west and call those people and split the deal and have all the other schools come in?" And like, "That's a great idea." And I'm like, "And I'll get paid. I won't feel bad, and
Yep.
you'll help your neighbors." And it was like that's the camaraderie and care that makes it so great in this industry. So, no, that's good. I think that Paul and I have talked about this a number of times. I love doing customer service talks with custodians. I love doing, I'm going out to Albuquerque Public Schools in 2 weeks to talk to their facilities and custodial staff and leadership. And because it's overlooked, right? We do the
Yeah.
training on cleaning and bloodborne pathogens and certifications and understanding MSD, the equipments and the sheets and everything else, but we don't say, all right, let's help you with your customer service. And they're the most customer facing people we have,
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody
and
sees them.
and what's amazing is the majority of them, while they don't know, are amazing at customer service without
Right.
any training or support or help.
Yeah.
So imagine if you gave them just a little bit. Imagine
Yeah.
if you gave them a little bit of, I'm sure you work with your team on, how to breathe and walk away. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just have to breathe and walk away,
Yeah.
So that's really cool. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I see we got David Young on LinkedIn says it is awesome to hear their trades for kids. Keep it up. And so true, Paul. I guess that's a comment from earlier that I just caught. LinkedIn's comments don't connect in with our stuff, but David is an every week listener. So thanks for jumping on, David. He was our tech support a couple of weeks ago too, when I couldn't figure out how to load people on here. Well, this has been great. Am I missing anything? Is there any, Paul? I think we got the.
We've covered it. I was wondering. I kept watching the chat because Ken Wirtz did threaten to come on and give Christina a hard time, and I was ready to defend her, but
Yeah.
It's okay. I can handle myself.
he backed off. Obviously, I'm not going to let him do that on our show.
Yeah, so he must be busy because he hasn't even bothered me via text, try to poke at me or anything.
Yeah.
He did text me. He was messaging me while I was in watching Thor, and I said I'll call you when I'm done. And then I told him just jump on the podcast, and he did approve the invite, but I didn't send him the link to actually come on live. But he hasn't put anything in comments or anything, so we can't tell if he's around or not. But I'm sure maybe he's just creeping and listening. So
yeah, that could be.
Yeah, just throwing out idle threats. No, this is awesome, Christina. You are such a breath of fresh air. Paul and I talk every day, and there's it's so hard to find great people today for anything, but we really want to figure out how to put more Christinas in the seats, right? I talked to a facility director at a school district that said he says he's retiring in September, and I said, "Oh, is there an heir apparent, or did they bring him from somebody from the outside?" And he says, "Well, if heir is spelled AIR, then yes," and which means there's no, we're in July, right? We're in July, and he's set to leave in September.
Yeah.
And they don't have somebody that person should be in his seat
right
last month at a bare minimum for a proper transition. And so, to have a conversation or just to get to meet you and learn is such a feeling of encouragement and possibility. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm really happy that you guys invited me. It was an honor. I think that the last piece, filling these seats is about, making them louder. We got to be louder about the opportunities. But I also think that, through COVID, I hope that it's really exposed the value of what this position does. I think it is a hard competition with the private market.
Hmm.
It is hard. It's a hard
Yeah.
competition. I absolutely made a lot more money in the private industry than I do now. Um, and it's tough when you're competing with that. So, you've got to find one, possibly a way to get more competitive. And it doesn't just have to be financially, it can be things like this
Hmm.
podcast, things like the camaraderie you get from the MFAA, partnerships that you make with the other directors around you. It doesn't just have to be financial, but I think I hope that through COVID, it's opened some eyes to just the value that this position can have, and hopefully that will then start to attract some other potential new employees that to fill these seats.
Yeah. What's interesting when you say that 72% of the people that were part of the Great Resignation, meaning they switched jobs, have resentment or regret that they left the previous employer, and only 40% are actually actively looking, which means there's 32% that are sitting in seats being miserable and toxifying their work environment that they're in. And I think that you're spot on. And I think we need to take away the word competitive with private sector, because you'll never be truly competitive with private sector, because when budgets are good for you, economy's good and they're paying
Right,
more. When
right,
budgets are bad, you don't have the money to hire people. A lot of times you have to let people go.
right.
And so you're spot on that the marketing of why someone should come and work in the operations world for schools is not about money. It's about making a difference. It's about improving outcomes, and it's about helping our kids and making a difference. And when you
And it
start
can be
putting
the
that all
quality
together,
of your life, like Christina said, at the start.
hey,
It
I
was about
saw
the quality of life.
I saw yesterday. Who was it? Keith Baldinger in Shrewsbury.
Yep.
He put out a job opening, right?
Yep.
I looked at it. I'm like, man, how cool would that be? Now I couldn't do it, Paul. You know me well enough that I can't. As you said, I just ran from one thing to another. But I really thought about it. I'm like, wow, how cool would it be to work in a town, for the town buildings, the town community, the stakeholders, and the students, and make an honest pay and be able to go home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't think that my house would be used to that ever. Like they're like, when are you going someplace? I'm like, Tuesday. I'll go Wednesday, whenever, figure something out, someplace to go. But it really, it was attractive to me. For
Yeah.
me, like, that'd be cool. And this has happened a couple times, Paul, in the last 18 years. I call you and I go, think I could be a facility director or a supervisor? I want to drive the plow truck. I want to do some cool stuff, man. I want to play
You
with
can
the
come
kids.
work for me and drive a plow truck any day.
There you go. You
Oh,
got a job in a snowstorm right now. There you go.
Yeah, just increase your insurance.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah.
no, this is awesome. Thank you so much, and we're going to have you back on. We're obviously going to be following along, because Paul and I are both advocates. He's a member of MFAA, and we stay very involved with everybody. So we're gonna be watching you grow and waiting for your campaign, so we can have you back on again.
Well, you guys know where to find me, and if there's ever anything I can do for either one of you guys, you just let me know.
Thank
Awesome.
you, and we know that you mean that. Thank you.
I do.
Appreciate
and thank you
it.
again. This was a great opportunity. I had fun chatting with you.
Yeah. So Josh, before we leave, do you have a shout out? Josh usually has a shout out for someone.
I have a shout out. I have an announcement, and I have a shout out, because this week's been a very busy week. So on I don't know what it was, Monday or Tuesday, Monday morning. Today's Friday. I guess it was Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, I put a post on LinkedIn with an announcement. Since then, it's had 10,000 or 12,000 views. I've had a couple hundred phone calls, emails, and private messages, a lot of questions, a real lot of excitement, which is cool. But I made the announcement that I'm consulting for a company called Operations Hero. Two of my buddies, Pat Buchanan and Scott Carpenter, started it. Pat and Scott and I both have a 25-year work history together. And the biggest question has been, what is a consultant for Operations Hero doing? And the answer is everything. So basically, I have given and continue to serve people like Christina and Paul, and with technology solutions. I left for 18 months, and I kind of sat and watched, and I miss it. And they're putting out some great solutions. And basically, I want to help with their client journey, getting someone from interested to a client, and then staying for life. Because we all three of us have the client for life mindset. We were trained by the Book of Joan Warren Maddox. We all know that she will haunt us if we don't take care of clients. So I'm a weekend. I'm getting calls and emails like crazy. I want everybody to know my phone number. It's direct all the time. It's actually my home phone number that I forwarded myself. It's 508-238-5711. Again, it's 508-238-5711. You can always reach me there. And josh@beawesome.com is my email. You got questions, concerns, we're going to be doing webinars. I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff to help these guys grow so that they can hire some more awesome people, because we've had a long history of being able to help. And I think one of the biggest hurdles right now is there's a lot of companies out there in all different aspects of business that are just trying to get a piece of the cheese. And they don't have, there's this thing called imposter syndrome going around, which is people feel that they're a fraud, or they're not worthy, or they're trying to show more experience than they have. I think imposter syndrome is when you pretend like you care about the client and you're really just caring about getting the business. And so I'm going to try to help them with that. But really excited, and hope to talk to a lot of folks there. While we're doing that, our good old friend Chris Martinetti said, building the facilities in close proximity is a brilliant way to share equipment, resources, and staff. Absolutely. There's a lot of that going on right now. And thank you, Chris, for joining. Chris is the one, Paul, that we're going to go to the Red Sox game. We're going to go find that garden on the roof. Go eat some produce and mow the lawn with my battery-powered lawnmower. 12 mows in like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. The thing's magical. Still works fantastic. So today's shout-out, I am giving a shout-out to a person that I have known for his career, 15 years and 8 months. His name is Curtis Orndorff. And he is from Frederick County Public Schools, and he has just announced his retirement. He's going to be retiring in August. And Curtis is an amazing, awesome human being. He leads a large team, and the work that I've watched him do and how much he's taught me in the industry is nothing short of extraordinary. I've been able to go and speak to his district's team twice. And when I went there, he shook my hand, and in his hand he had something, and he said, I don't just give these out to anybody. And he actually has his own challenge coin presented by Curtis Orndorff, manager of buildings and grounds, supporting high quality education by providing an optimal learning environment. And they've got a couple of leaders have them, but they hold them very close, and it's just for people that really made a difference in their district, in their staff, and in their community. And I'm really excited to see where he's going. I think he's going to retire. I don't know that he knows how to retire, but I wanted to give him a shout out.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. Well, Paul, you're going to make a trip down there at some point with me.
Yeah.
When you go into their building and grounds, it's the oldest building in the district. It's their own building, and when you walk in, you think you're in like Disney World with motivational quotes and things. They've got it's the power of positivity in the hallways, just. And the brightness, just they cover every bit of what you need to do to make work comfortable, and they invest in their team. I got the coin because they were smart enough, and I tell school districts, if you've got companies that you like to work with and that they do great with customer service, send their CEO an email and ask for them to send somebody to do a class, preferably for free. And that's what Frederick County did. In 2018, they sent the CEO that I had at the time, Ed Rossich, an email and said, we love the way that you lead. Ed's author of a book called The Solid Handshake. And it's all about leading with integrity and honesty and trust. And Ed said, yeah. And he sent four people, himself included. Guy just said, hey, no charge. We're going to send our 4 people over there. We're going to do a half-day workshop with your team. And it was awesome. So, Curtis, enjoy your last month. I think it's August 8th is his last day. Enjoy your last month, and thank you for your service. You made a huge impact in not just your community, but the country, and helping others. So hopefully he enjoys himself for what I predict will be the week that he's retired before he unretires. So, and if you want Paul's number to learn about what not to do if you want to stay retired. Paul's got a book on that too.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been great. Appreciate you guys coming on here. Another fun hour. And for all of those that listen, watch, please continue to subscribe, share, like, comment, 5 stars, ratings, and reviews. Our merchandise store on beawesome.com. We've added sweatshirts that amazingly are wildly comfortable and soft and also happen to be made from recycled materials. We've got the tumbler that Paul's been drinking from. I'm not sure what's in it, but it looks good. So we've got a whole bunch of new stuff, and that'll do it for us. So if you can be anything, be awesome.